Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is another important date for JMA. We are starting a new series called Inspiring Leaders Series, where we would invite the inspiring leaders to talk on their lives. Today we have none other than Mr. Firdose Vandrevala as the speaker. Sir, it's honor and privilege to have you. We were supposed to host you for SYMP in March, but unfortunately the event got cancelled due to COVID. Just to introduce JMA to you, JMA is a chapter of All India Management Association. We cater to management professionals of Jamshedpur, which include executives of Tata Steel, Tata Motors, ISWP, Tata Utilities and Infrastructure Services Limited, Tata Pigment, Tata Steel Long Product, Tata Power, Tata Cummins, TCIL, ICICI, etc. Some of the programs are also targeted towards budding management professionals, the students of various educational institutes that we have in Jamshedpur. In the year 1920, JMA has won JMA Award for Best Management Association in Category 4 cities and also Most Improved Management Association in the India. Today in this session, we have Ms. Rupa Mahanti, JMA board member, to moderate the session. Let me introduce Ms. Rupa Mahanti to you all. Rupa Mahanti is a management consultant, an educator, and a philanthropist. She is a member of the Board of Governors of Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, her alma mater. An MBA from IIM Calcutta, she has a BSc Honours from Elphinstone College, Bombay University. Starting her career in Tata Steel, she worked in the areas of IT, career planning, strategy, and restructuring at the corporate level. After a decade and a half with Tata Steel, Mrs. Mahanti chose to follow a more independent career path. She taught business policy and strategy at XLRI for a couple of terms before launching her own consultancy, RM Associates. During its history, RM Associates was a consultant to virtually all the business houses in India as well as several government institutions. Mrs. Mahanti served on the board of Timken India Limited as an independent director and is on the executive board of the Jamshedpur Management Association. After another decade and a half of successful consulting, she hung up her boots and concentrates her time and energy on philanthropic activities. She is presently the chairperson of the Kodi Mahanti Children's Opportunity Trust and the founder of the Kodi Mahanti Children's Educational Trust. Mrs. Mahanti is a Reiki Grandmaster and healer recognized by the Indian Board of Alternative Medicine and works actively in healing through Reiki. She is licensed pilot and has flown in a rally in Australia. She has trained in accelerated free fall and skydiving and enjoys adventure. Being a fitness enthusiast, she is regular gymmer, swimmer, and a qualified yoga instructor. She studied German for a year at the Goethe Institute, Pune. Mrs. Mahanti's book, co-authored with T.N. Hari, Back to Basics, is a critic of various management mantras and fads and has been used in several educational institutions. Her motto is take risk not to escape life but to prevent life from escaping. With this, I hand over the session to Mrs. Rupa Mahanti to introduce Mr. Firdose Vandrevala and take it forward. Over to you, Rupa ma'am.
Thank you, Amitabh. And Firdose, welcome back to Jamshedpur. Because a person who I've known for more than 4 decades, it's quite a daunting task to select what one says about someone one knows so well for so long. But given that, let me go the formal route for the beginning. My dear friend, it is a proud moment for me to introduce Firdose Vandrevala. Firdose Vandrevala was a former executive vice chairman, SR Steel, India, and is the past president of the All India Management Association. Mr. Vandrevala worked in steel, power, telecommunications, and real estate industries with illustrious organizations such as Tata Group, Motorola, and Hirco, covering all functions of the business value chain such as procurement, planning, production, sales, marketing, and product management. He has taken on significant bottom line responsibilities. Known for very good reason as a turnaround wizard, he successfully changed the fortunes of unprofitable business units revitalize marketing and sales team outcomes, and led the charge for customer focus at Tata Steel. A graduate from IIT Kharagpur, Firdose won the Best Student Patel Hall Prize during his term at the institute. He holds a PGDBM from XLRI Jamshedpur and has participated in executive training programs at both Harvard and INSEAD business schools. A keen sportsman in his youth, he is well known for his dry wit and sense of caring, deep sense of caring for all who work around him. We used to always tease Firdose that for all that he talks about being businesslike and straightforward and tough, he has the absolute soft-centered core, which is a wonderful balance that he carries with him. And I won't stand very long between Firdose and his enthusiastic audience. We are all looking forward to hearing an inspiring leader talking about inspirational leadership. So Firdose, we welcome you on behalf of the Jamshedpur Management Association back to your home territory where you grew up. And for the purpose of the structure of this program, we look forward to listening to you for approximately half an hour or more, if you will. After which, we'll encourage the enthusiastic audience to ask questions, which I'm sure you will handle with your usual aplomb. Thank you, Firdose, for being here with us on my behalf and behalf of JMA. I'm looking forward to your session. Over to you and welcome again.
Thank you, Rupa. Since I'm talking to the Jamshedpur Management Association members, I would like to tell you that I was one of the former presidents of the JMA many, many years ago, probably before many of you were born too. So JMA is not a new organization to me. Since we are talking about leadership, and I think the first question that people will ask, how do you define a leader? And I will do something that you will not find in the textbooks. For me, leader is somebody who gives energy to his team and doesn't take away energy from the team. So if you want to know you're a leader or not, just ask yourself this simple question. But the format I've chosen for today is that I'm not going to give you gyan. You have enough of that in textbooks and business management magazines. So I'm going to take a rather unorthodox approach of describing some incidents, actual incidents that have taken place in my life. And I just noted down a couple of days back, jogging my memory. And it's up to you to learn the lesson from that incident. There are several incidents. Some of you will remember some, which is fair enough. And actually, it is good enough. If you just think and try to remember what was said at your convocation, for instance, which is a very important function in every person's life as they graduate, 99% won't remember 99% of the things that were said. I think the real test of my talk today is that if you remember 20% of what I've said and have learned something from it, I would have felt satisfied that yes, it was worth my time and effort in this session. So it's up to you what you remember, it's up to you what you take away from this. And I will follow the best way of transferring knowledge is by storytelling. That's what research has shown, that the best way to transfer knowledge is to tell stories. So I'm going to tell you stories. My life with Jamshedpur and Tata Steel began in October 1971. The then managing director, Rusi Modi, and I hope some of you may recall his name, if not the person, because it was many years ago. He came to Kharagpur. We were unaware of it. We had already gone into class and we were told Mr. Modi has arrived with the top management team of TISCO. At that time, it was known as the Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited. So we all hurried back to our hostels for a clean shave and a clean shirt and came back. And it was a fascinating interview. It was just group discussion. simple cutoff level. Mr. Modi said, look, I'm not going to test your technical knowledge. If you're an IIT and if you've got a first division, that's all that matters to me. And I remember that this group discussion, one part was he selected some of us and asked us to describe our life in 5 words. He said, you have 5 words to tell me about yourself and your life. So one of my colleagues went on a little longer than that. And Mr. Modi stopped him and said, I don't know how you got into IIT, you don't know how to count. Of course, we were young and therefore a little adventurous. That guy, Arun Khosla, promptly shot back to Mr. Modi, sir, I can't do it. Why don't you tell me the story of your life in 5 words? And he took a couple of seconds and his answer was from playboy to playboy. Now that was shocking to the professors, but it just showed the courage of the man and more importantly, his sense of humor. And therefore, although at that time I did get opportunities, being an electrical engineer, it was quite crazy of me to join a metallurgical industry. But in spite of having offers at more than twice the salary, I joined Tata Steel. And actually, it wouldn't be correct to say I joined Tata Steel. It would be more correct to say I joined Rusi Modi, because it was he that sort of made me join Tata Steel. And to be honest, it's a decision I've not regretted. It is probably one of the best decisions I've taken in my life. Because Tata Steel is where I grew up and I learned the most. I went to various programs besides XLRI in Jamshedpur, the evening program, attended Harvard, attended CDEP, INSEAD, many IIM Ahmedabad, many management institutes, but I think the best institute for the longest time, 25 years, has been Tata Steel. That's a company where I earned and I learned and I contributed. And you have to decide when you're at this stage of your career that of these 3 things, of earning, learning and contributing, what percentage of each you want. For me in the beginning, it was more to learn, and then obviously towards the end, more to contribute. Tata Steel was a fun organization. And then I'd say that because it was the way things were conducted. Our induction, 1st October 1972, was with our general manager, a gentleman called P. Anand. The then superintendent of training got up and gave his introductory speech and then asked Mr. Anand to give his address. So Mr. Anand got up, said 3C Road and sat down. Now, as all of you know, in Jamshedpur, the 3 bungalows on C Road are the 3 bungalows for the 3 top people in Tata Steel. So you can, first of all, we didn't understand what he meant, and then it took up a couple of seconds. But that set the tone that, look, in this organization, humor is a part of life. And I mention it not because it was humorous at that time, but it set the seeds for us to follow that same principle as we grew up and took positions in Tata Steel. That Tata Steel should remain a fun organization. Because your first impression is your lasting impression. It sets the culture that first we follow and then we make. Just to give you another example of the sense of humor that existed in Tata Steel at that time, in our induction, Mr. Modi also came to speak to us. He was the managing director. And he told us Tata Steel is a Pepsi company. So we were all confused. What do you mean by that? Does it mean we can't drink Coke or any other soft drink? And he said, no. What I mean is that Tata Steel is a Pepsi company because it is run by Parsis, English-speaking Punjabis, and South Indians. So that's the sense of humor and ease that existed between the topmost level in the organization and the junior most where we were. Another incident that made a mark on me and that affected my style of leadership is that part of our GT training, since at that time we had to work in the plant and the level of automation that exists now wasn't there. So you had to be strong. As a matter of fact, you had to have a minimum weight to be in the organization. So as part of our curriculum, there was physical training, which we found rather odd and we took objection to. And of course, we gave the physical trainer a tough time. I won't go into those details because that's not germane to the lesson learned. But the physical trainer went and complained to the superintendent of training, one Mr. Benny Fernandez. So these names won't mean anything to you people. So Mr. Fernandez, in front of the trainer, fired us. And after the trainer left, he talked to us and said, look, why are you making my life difficult? What's your problem? And we told him that, look, we are graduates, we are from IIT and all, we've not joined Tata Steel to do physical training. And that physical training included freehand exercise and doing march past practice and all that stuff. We found it unacceptable. So he says, okay, look, it's important as part of your training that you have some physical exercises inbuilt. We'll make a change and include sports instead of PT at that time. So the lesson was, look, you adjust your message according to the audience. He did that. Then during training, a fascinating subject for me at least was blast furnaces. I was very keen to know more about blast furnaces. So I went to the superintendent of blast furnace at that time, a gentleman called Mr. Kapadia, Y.S. Kapadia, who then became general superintendent, and asked him for some references and books on blast furnaces so that I could study more on the subject. And he said, sure, I will tell you that, Firdose, but I have some better advice for you, better than telling you about how blast furnaces work. You will learn more in life. You will learn more in life and you will be more successful, not by studying blast furnaces, but by studying people and events. That will affect the way you operate and what you learn in real life. And I found that to be very useful advice, which I pass on to you now. When you look at things, take a holistic approach. And that again came very early in my career with Mr. Modi, hardly in our second month of training. We were having some discussion and he asked me, Firdose, how many days are there in a week, in a day? How many hours are there? Sorry. How many hours are there in a day? Sorry, can you guys hear me? Because if I can't see the audience, I feel I'm talking to myself. So if some
yes,
of
sir.
you go, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Talking without feedback, the communication doesn't get complete because I can't see anybody on the screen either.
Firdose, would you like us to put our cameras on? Would that make it a little nicer for you?
Yeah, then I feel I'm talking to people and not to myself.
So may I request everyone to please put your cameras on, then we can all be in the same chat room. Unless the load is too much, then we'll start loading off the...
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, at least 10, 15 so that my screen is not empty with blocks and initials. Anyway, so let me carry on.
Okay, please. Because it's,
So he asked me how many hours are there in a day and I was wondering, is it a trick question? And I said, sir, 24. He says, great. How many hours do you sleep? Again, I thought for a while, what's the trick question? I said, 8. So he said, how many hours are left? So again, I said, trick question. I said, 16. So then I said, okay, let's have a deal, 50-50. I said, yo, whatever that means, 50-50. He says, okay, you work for 8 hours for me in the company and in the plant, and I will make sure that the balance 8 hours, you have a good quality of life in Jamshedpur. So you do your job and I'll do mine. And I think that's a great lesson I learned, that actually many of us try to do the job of our subordinate. Let him do his job. You just look after him, make sure he's okay. And I think that I'll tell you subsequently how it had affected my successes as I moved along in life. And actually, that was one of the reasons why I even stayed in Jamshedpur, because otherwise Jamshedpur can be a difficult town to live in, as many of you know, because you are actually living there. In 1974, after 2 years of training as a GT, I joined the Central Engineering Division as an assistant engineer. And my ratings were good. And I used to look back and wonder, because the guy next to me, the other assistant engineer, who was not a GT, he was a better engineer than me, but his ratings were not so good. Main reason was many of his projects were never completed on time. And all my projects got completed on time. And I wondered why. And it then became apparent and very clear to me that what had happened during the GT training, during the 2 years of GT training, was not that I learned about steel making and I learned about the plant. But in addition to that, and probably more important than that, keeping in view Mr. Kapadia's words, is that I had established relationships with all the superintendents and the key people in each department. And at that time, you know, when you were in the Central Engineering Division, you were doing work within the department, modernizing, automating. So you needed to coordinate with that department. And because of those relationships with those people, I was able to implement my projects better and faster than my colleague, who was a much better engineer than me. But he did not have the relationship, the connection with these people to make things go smoothly as I could. And that led me to believe that actually in life, you need intangible assets. And there are 3 C's, 3 intangible assets you need: concepts, competencies, and connections. All of us concentrate on the first 2, trying to get our concepts clear, how blast furnaces work, trying to get our competencies better. And we always think as the 3rd C as a necessary evil. I would challenge that, because in India, connections means you use your connection to do something illegal or not as per the rules. But connections are extremely important in your day-to-day life, and it is something I would urge you to establish. As a matter of fact, when I was Vice President Marketing and Sales, which was external to the organization, one of the things I put down is that I should every week establish 2 new contacts. I would actually measure that. Have I got 2 more contacts? Because I needed to be out in the field. My 1977, I got an opportunity to go to US as a Rotary exchange student.
Don't you know?
The interview was in 76. And like I told you, sense of humor was something I had naturally, and it was encouraged by the environment in Tata Steel. And the emergency had just got over, and we had a gentleman called Mr. Vandrevala, who was a very keen Rotarian and general manager engineering and a director on the board of Tata Steel at that time. And he asked me some questions about the emergency. And the advice I was given, that as I was going as an unofficial ambassador of India as part of the group study exchange program, was that don't take any extreme positions. You are an unofficial ambassador of goodwill from India to US as a member of the Rotary exchange team. So always try and take a middle of the road position. So I did that, and I tried to defend Indira Gandhi, saying circumstances, etc. And he was absolutely anti-Indira Gandhi. So he got very upset with me and said, then tell me the difference. Are you telling me that there is no difference between Hitler and Indira Gandhi? And I said, sir, there is. She's a woman and he's a man. All the others started laughing, but he was not amused with that. And therefore, choose your sense of humor very carefully. Of course, I had to do a lot of recovery for the balance of the interview. But the more important part, I remember that not because that was my first time I went overseas or I went as a Rotary exchange student. This was a 6-week program, and I applied to the management for 2 weeks of special leave. I didn't have lots of leave, so I asked for special leave, that please give me 2 weeks special leave. I would like to visit Westinghouse and General Electric on my own cost, so that I can learn more about electrical engineering and products and how these companies work, etc. So my application was forwarded to the general manager, Mr. Anand, and Mr. Anand sent it to Mr. Modi. So Mr. Modi, in those days we didn't have cameras and cell phones with cameras. So I remember that memo. It's a pink memo in those days, where columns where people wrote comments. I see Rupa smiling, so she can correlate with that. And Mr. Modi had written, "How is he in his work?" And Mr. Anand wrote back, "Good boy with potential." Third comment from Mr. Modi, "This is ridiculous. If he is going to improve his knowledge for our benefit, give him special leave, daily allowance, and internal airfare." I asked for X, I got X times X. I can never forget that. And that sort of made me realize that part of a leader is to be magnanimous. Have a big heart, be generous, not because it's not your money, but it makes an impact on the people that you are dealing with. Now, as many of you don't know, Mr. Modi was not a technocrat. He was not an engineer at all. And at that time, we were setting up powerhouse number 4, and the 12.5 megawatt set was coming up. And there was a great debate and divide in the company whether this 12.5 megawatt set should be a 12.5 megawatt back pressure turbine generator set, or should we just get 20 odd megawatts and go straight through with no back pressure steam for blast furnace process. And then eventually it was such a great divide that he called a meeting. I remember it was around 4 o'clock. It carried on till 5 o'clock. There was no consensus. So he said, okay, we'll meet tomorrow. By chance, I met him in the Beldy Club. We used to go to the Beldy Club and hang around, hoping some senior person would buy us a drink. We didn't have enough money to buy ourselves a drink then. So he bought me a beer. And he says, Firdose, you were at the meeting today. What do you think? Should we get a full through turbine generator set, or should we get a back pressure set? So I said, here comes Mr. Modi with one of his googlies again. I said, sir, I was there to make minutes of the meeting. My view doesn't matter. Your view matters. What is your view? And he said, Firdose, I have already made up my mind. So I said, sir, you made up your mind? Then why are you having the meeting? He said, it's very important for everybody to think that I'm listening to them. But I've already made up my mind. So I said, sir, so what have you made up your mind? Back pressure or the full through turbine generator? He said, that I don't know. Whatever Padmanabhan says, I will do. I don't know this subject, but I know who knows the subject. And his advice to me was, Firdose, don't try to be an expert on all subjects. You need to be an expert on 1 or 2 subjects. But you need to know who in your team you can believe in and you trust in as an expert in that particular subject. And of course, Padmanabhan opted for the back pressure set, and that's where we are. Another incident that stuck in my head, it still sticks in my head, is my first promotion. The first promotion in a company like getting a first baby in the family. I was assistant engineer and I became project engineer. But why I remember it, not because of the sweet taste in my mouth, but because of the sour taste in my mouth. Those days there were no WhatsApp and emails and all that. We used to get memos. So in my tray there were a lot of papers, and I was going through it. And then there was an envelope, Firdose Vandrevala. So I wondered who it is. And those days, you know, the envelope had an opening which was transparent. So you would write your name and then fold it so the name shows. You didn't have to write the name again on the envelope. So I opened it, and it was a letter saying I'd been promoted. I was really pissed. said, what the hell? This is no way to tell a guy you're promoted. And ever since that, every time I promoted someone, I've made sure that I made it a big event. If possible, included the family in the ceremony. And it made me feel good, besides the guy who got promoted feel good. One person in Tata Steel that made a big difference in my life was Dr. Irani. I wouldn't say was, is, still is. At that time, the culture in Tata Steel was that there was always a strong conflict between the engineering division and the works. And obviously the works were the dadas, they had their top 3 buttons open, and the guys in engineering were in short sleeve. And we had a program called the Technical Officers Program, where, I don't know if it's still there, where young guys with potential, an alternate route was created so that they don't get stuck waiting for a vacancy and a promotion, and they get an opportunity to have a wider experience and exposure. So Dr. Irani was the General Manager of Operations, and he would have a dialogue with all technical officers. So he started criticizing the Central Engineering Division. And I stood up and sort of gave him some pushback, saying that if the plant doesn't know what they want, how can engineering division solve their problems? Plant knows what they want after the project is over, not before. So there was quite a heated discussion. After that discussion, I was pulled aside by one senior officer of the Tata Management Training Center and told, Firdose, what's wrong with you? You are known to be outspoken, but choose your opponents well. Please don't argue with Dr. Irani. He is going to be the next managing director and you don't want to be in his wrong side. So I said, yes, sir. 3 months later, the technical officer dialogue happened again. And invariably, we got into, I wouldn't say a conflict, but a difference of opinion, and I didn't back down too easily. A couple of weeks later, when I came back after my rounds in the plant to my office in Central Engineering, there was a note saying that Dr. Irani would like to meet you. I said, oh no, here it comes. So I was given an appointment for 6 p.m. I eventually entered his room at something like 7:30 p.m. And he started asking me questions about the plant and what he thought about the situation, the coke ovens, and there were some problems in the medium and light structural mill. And so we discussed that. Then he told me, do you know what's happening? I told him, yes, sir, you're ragging me because I didn't agree with all your views during our dialogue. He said, no, I'm not ragging you. Next month, I'm going to become Deputy Managing Director. I said, congratulations, sir. Mr. Modi and I have shortlisted 4 persons to be my assistant. You're one of them. So this is your interview. So you think about it and let me know if you're interested. So I kept sitting there. So he looked at me, he said, yes, what are you waiting for? So I said, sir, I am going to be your assistant. Better you think about it. Because what am I to think? I'll be your assistant. You are choosing your assistant. I'm not choosing my boss. So that set the tone of our relationship since then and has remained that way, that he allowed me to speak my mind and that has helped me a lot. But I think the important thing here that I learned, besides my personal self, is that he chose me for 2 reasons. One is because I could speak my mind and he wanted someone in his office who would tell him not what he wants to hear, but another point of view. And that's very important. And secondly, as he told me, he says, look, I was a works man. If I'm going to be Deputy Managing Director looking after all the operations of the company, I needed someone from Central Engineering that will help me also understand what happens there. Obviously, my appreciation of the engineering division is not very good. It's limited. And therefore, he chose me as his first technical officer or technical assistant. And since then, we've had a very special relationship. And although we are different personalities, I think the relationship has lasted because it is based on courage, truthfulness, and trust. Traits that he values, and so do I. And the third reason why he chose me, which I found out later, because when my replacement came, he told that guy, he said, look, one of your main jobs is I'm a tough boss. And quite often when a guy leaves my office, he needs a shoulder to cry on. So part of your job is to give that shoulder so that when he comes out, he doesn't leave distraught. So I think Dr. Irani was very clever, although he was a technocrat, in terms of understanding behavior and what was needed. That while he knew he was a tough guy, he needed someone with a softer personality. I'm not sure I was that, but with a softer personality to smooth things out a bit before he eventually left the office. And I think one important part of leadership, therefore, out of that whole experience, is that you need to know yourself and surround yourself with people who are different, who will supplement and complement you, but at the same time, share your basic values. Now, Mr. Modi was a towering legend in Tata Steel. Many of you would have just probably heard of him, but he was really something. The transition from Mr. Modi to Dr. Irani for the company was rather tumultuous. It was not a smooth transition. But more than the process of the transition, a lot of people worried that there were two very different styles of leaders. Mr. Modi was charismatic, jovial, extrovert, a master in human relations. Dr. Irani was reserved, a technocrat, very different personality. How will the company assimilate two different styles of leaders? And how will Dr. Irani fit into the shoes of Mr. Modi? And now when I look back and think that what are Dr. Irani's greatest achievements, and surprisingly, I would say that more than modernization or anything on the technology front, whether it is getting in stamp charging in the coke ovens or modernizing the plant, I think it was more in the areas of industrial relations. You know, Tata Steel had 77,000 people. IR was a very important part. As a matter of fact, there was a gentleman, Mr. S.N. Pandey, who was Director of Industrial Relations and held a very senior position because he handled the union. I was one day talking to Mr. Pandey, and then one of the union leaders walked into his room. And the union leader lay down on the floor and touched Mr. Pandey's feet and said, "Maaf kar dijiye." I was very embarrassed because he was a very senior leader, very popular, very powerful. So I left Mr. Pandey's office immediately because it was too embarrassing for me to be in that room. After about 10 minutes, this guy comes out. And obviously a union leader means there are 10, 15 people always with him, you know, chelas who are always with the leader. He comes out and says, "Sale ko samjha diya." My eyes were burning. I said, I was sitting there, he has seen me sitting there, and he has seen me that he has laid down on the ground and touched his feet, and he comes out and says something absolutely opposite. So I went into Mr. Pandey's office and told him, "Pandey sir, ye jaake aise aise bol raha." He says, "Very good." He says, "What do you want him to go and say? That he touched my feet?" He is the leader, he has to be a strong guy. I have to make sure he's a strong guy. Then I control him. That way IR is very good. That they don't teach you in Harvard or any other management school. But like I came back about leadership styles and where I think Dr. Irani had a lasting impression on Tata Steel, besides many other things, was two things in my mind, and both are around industrial relations. Mr. V.G. Gopal was the president of the Tata Workers Union. Again, these are names you will not know, and I think if you are in Tata Steel, you should know the history of Tata Steel. Like Mr. Kapadia told me, learn history, learn people, study events, and you'll be better off. He was assassinated. There was shock. Within a few hours, Dr. Irani called all the union committee members to his office and says, look, we have a situation. It's very sad, but you have 2 hours to elect a leader. Doesn't matter if he's the right leader, just elect one for the time being. Otherwise, we'll have outsiders coming in and taking the leadership of the union. And you need to keep it internal. And they did that. And it was during his tenure that Tata Steel reduced its workforce from 77,000 to less than 50,000 in a few years. So it's not what you are in the past that defines what you are in the future. I think depending on the challenges that you have and the way you deal with it is good. And I think what Dr. Irani did and what I learned most is that as a leader, don't try to ape your successful predecessor. Mr. Modi was very successful in his style of management, in his style of leadership. Dr. Irani was very different. He did not try to copy Mr. Modi's style of management. He says, this is me. I'm going to do it my way. And he did it his way and it worked. So I think it's important that one is true to yourself, because if you're a natural leader, or rather if you're a leader in your natural way and not trying to be someone else, you will succeed. I worked very closely with him, so I tried to reflect back that what are the 3 most important things that I have learned from him? There are many, but I just thought yesterday when I was trying to make my notes, I said, let me reflect. And I think 3 things that I could think of. First is be a man of your word. What Dr. Irani taught me, and I think everybody in the organization trusted him for, that if he said something, he meant it and he would try to do it. For him, indeed, a promise is a promise. It's not something to keep you happy, knowing that he can't do it and he says, okay, I'll try. If he couldn't do it or wasn't going to do it, it came straight out and people said, my God, he's a rough and tough boss. But actually, he was an honest guy. He said what he thought and felt and didn't try to sugarcoat something just to make it sweet. The second thing is what he says quite often. He says there are times when you have to choose between being popular and being respected. And he gave me that advice. He says, Firdose, you'll have to choose that do you want to be respected or do you want to be popular? And he said, I have decided to be respected. You can make your own choice. And he challenged me once later, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And the third one is that be honest. Now, when we talk of honesty, we invariably think about commercial honesty. But with Dr. Irani, I learned the value of intellectual honesty. That whatever you think, you should speak, and he allowed me to do that and encouraged me to do that. That to be intellectually honest, I think is a great quality for a leader. Then from his office, I went to bar forge and tire mill. Bar forging was a new four hammer forging machine that was installed for making axles. And tire mill was on the parallel building, sharing a set of columns, making tires from a very, very old plant. There were problems there, and it was felt that I should move from engineering into the plant to give me works experience, and I opted for it. What I found that, I'm not going to tell you everything that happened there, but at the end of 1 year, at bar forging, we had record production beyond the capacity of the plant also. And we were elated and celebrating. And then when the general foreman started telling the figures, guess what? The old tire mill had also achieved record production, which we were oblivious of because we were so focused on the plant. And we wondered what happened. And there is a shadow effect. The enthusiasm, the momentum, the tempo that had built up in the bar forging plant had rubbed off on the tire mill. Then from there, I went to rolling mill number 1. You guys won't know, there was no continuous casting at that time. we had cogging mills. There was a 40-inch cogging mill and a 46-inch cogging mill. 46 was the newer, larger one, RM2. And the reason Rupa is smiling, because when I was superintendent rolling mill, I used to keep telling her that I am superintendent RM1 and her initials are RM. So we used to joke on that a bit. So rolling mill 1 was a smaller mill, an older mill. For instance, the crane driver's cabin had no air conditioning. So when you open the soaking pits, the heat that would come up before the crane picked up the ingots vertically was immense. RM2 had a air-conditioned cabin. So there were a lot of reasons why RM1 was consistently lower than RM2 in production, besides the size and age. But when I was there, for 12 months continuously, we broke the previous corresponding month record and rolled more than RM2. And everybody asked me, how did you manage that? And it was very simple. I never tried to run the mill. I only looked after the people. I looked after the people, I established relationships with the people, and it was all about people management. And that theme is going to continue and for the rest of the incidents that I'm going to speak about. But concentrating on people is one thing I would encourage you to do. Because eventually that's where all performance happens. It was during that time I sort of brought in customer focus. We were still a very production-oriented company. And I brought in internal contracts between the steel melting shops, because I was their customer and people would say, "Kya lafra karta hai? He wants a contract." I said, "I'm your internal customer. I would supply to the strip mill and to the merchant mill." So I became their supplier. We worked out contracts and we would have quarterly review meetings, which was all very new at that time. And that, in a way, also has set up my career going forward. I didn't realize it then. But the time of my life, there are 2 times of my life that I really enjoyed my leadership positions. And by leader, I don't mean like a big boss. Like I said, someone responsible and giving energy. Was in the tubes division in the period 88 to 91. The tubes division was actually an independent company, Indian Tube Company. And then it got merged as a division of Tata Steel. The person who was looking after that division was called Director Tubes Division. I was Superintendent RM1. So Mr. Modi called me to his office and told me, "We're going to send you to Tubes Division. What do you think about it?" So I said, "Thank you, sir, delighted. But I wouldn't like to be called Director Tubes Division." So he looked at me, he says, "Another mad Parsi." So I said, he said, "Every day I get requests from people saying that they should be designated director." It was a fancy, and because at that time the Director Tubes Division reported directly to the Vice President, Mr. Mehra. So I said, "No, I want to become Assistant General Manager Tubes. I'm Superintendent now, I want to be Assistant General Manager Tubes." And I would report to Mr. P.N. Roy, who was the Senior General Manager Works. So he kept looking at me, looked up, and he says, "I don't understand this. Please explain to me your rationale." So I said, "Look, sir, Tubes Division has 2 major problems. One is in the marketplace. The product is not doing well. There are issues around customer acquisition, etc. And the second is it is suffering on production because it's not getting gas, it's not getting steel, and it's not getting power." At that time, we used to have power problems. Now, if I report to the Senior General Manager Works, then he is responsible for giving me steel, power, and gas. So half my problems are solved. I have transferred my problems to the Senior General Manager. And I can focus on tubes operations and on the market. And he says, "Okay, I buy that." And that's why I moved, instead of Director Tubes Division, I moved as Assistant General Manager Tubes Division. And there was a beautiful turnaround situation. I remember one of the first things I did was, quality means when the customer returns, not the tube. And every time a quality complaint came, all of us, all employees, for 1 week, we would wear a black band, saying, shame on us, we have a quality complaint. Whether it was me or the lowest crane driver or my driver, although he was not responsible, we are all in one team, we wear a band. And one of the major problems we had was a leaking tube. We would get, we would send the tubes and we would get a leaking tube. I remember actually my first day in tubes division, I got a guy quality head from Thermax, and I was having a meeting with the union members, because in Tata Steel, the first thing you do is you deal with the union so that there is peace and you can get on with the production. And this guy was livid. He says, I bought your tubes, the Tata tubes. So we put it in a boiler without testing because we trusted Tata tubes. And when we did the pressure test, the tube was leaking. I said, what was the problem? He said, there was a hole in the tube. And I remember saying, and again, this is the time, one of the time when my humor backfired. I said, but if there's no hole, it's not a tube, it's a bar. So he was not amused by that. But one of the major problems we had was leakage tubes. And I wondered that how can there be leaking tubes? Because each tube was 100% water pressure tested. At the end of the production, the tube would get high pressure water, and there was a pressure chart. If there was a leak, obviously the pressure would drop, and the pressure chart would show that drop in pressure. And we would check the charts, and they were 100% showing no leaks. But in spite of that, there were leaks. And then we found out in the night shift, when supervision was low, the guy would press the tube 10 times, the same tube. So he tested one tube 10 times and showed it as 10 tubes tested. Now I'm an engineer. All my colleagues were engineers. So how to solve this problem? We found a technical solution. We put in a pressure system of spray paint. I won't get into the details. But what happened was, the solution, we saw an engineering solution because we were engineers. That did not solve the problem fully. Costs went up, production went down because we had to change things. It slowed down the production process. And then eventually I got advice from another gentleman, S. Pandey, the second S. Pandey in the company. He says, Firdose, why don't you let them understand all the processes that have taken place till the tube reaches the final pressure testing. So I got these guys, we had a 3-day program, and I got these guys to visit the plant to understand the whole value chain and let them understand that, look, by being lazy or being smart in a negative way, what it meant to the company. And after that, there were no more problems of tubes leaking. So many times, the solution defines the problem. Because I'm an engineer, I can think of engineering solutions. And I saw the problem as an engineering problem. But you need to take a holistic approach. I remember that at that time I made the 7 keys to leadership. This was something that I made, and I still have it. It's a tube, if you can make out. And it's in that tubes division. I still carry it with me. And I wrote this: 1, trust your subordinate. 2, develop a vision. 3, keep your cool. 4, encourage risk. 5, be an expert. 6, invite dissent. And 7, simplify. And I found that very useful, so I still actually carry it with me. But another incident that really stands out in the tubes division is that when all this was going on and things were going well, I was still assistant general manager at tubes. There was a call from the security main gate to my Bada Babu. The secretary was called a Bada Babu, that Modi Sahab aaya hai. So I was having a meeting. For some strange reason, again, it was the union members. As soon as they heard that, they got up and left. Because if Mr. Modi is coming to your office, it means that's your last day in office. You're getting sacked. It had happened a couple of times. So I started scratching my head, wondering, what have I done? Why did Mr. Modi come? He came, he sat down, he says, Firdose, you're doing a good job. Said, thank you, sir. I thought he's fattening the calf before the slaughter. He said, I can't promote you. I said, sir, I've not asked for a promotion. I can't pay you more. Sir, I've not asked you. He said, okay, I'll do something for you that I've not done for anybody else, what I've not even done for Aditya. So I said, okay, sir, wondering, thank you, sir. Now, Indian Tube Company was a separate company. He was the chairman of the company. And the room next door to mine was the chairman's room, where every day fresh flowers would be put, and nobody had used that room for several years, but it was still maintained as the chairman's room. He says, come. He took me to that room and says, okay, this office is now yours. That meant a lot to me, meant a lot to how the town saw, because I'd moved into the chairman's office. So innovation is not necessarily always about technology. There can be innovation even in what we do in HR. Rupa, how are we doing on time? I see we are into 6 o'clock, so I can stop now.
It's interesting. We're all engaged, and please continue.
Okay, so I'll try and take 5 more minutes and then stop.
Take 10.
So then,
We're enjoying.
So then from there, I went to, became General Manager Production. So my designation was GMP. Everybody thought I was General Manager Production. For me, I was General Manager People. I could never be an expert on blast furnaces or steel melting or continuous casting. The respective AGMs knew their jobs. My job was to keep the team motivated. So much so, even when we had a meeting with the union, the management would sit on one side, the union would sit on the other side. I would get up and sit on the union side. So they said, what are you doing here? I said, Kya hua? They said, no, we are here, we are union, we represent the people. I said, excuse me. You represent the people, but the people are mine, not yours. You can represent them, but that does not make you, these are my people and I have to look after them. And at that time, the quality movement had started in Tata Steel, and among several things, we had what is called JWQC, the Joint Works Quality Council, where there was a massive thrust for improving the quality, and I was made chairman of that. So we had called various, at annual function, we had called various management quality gurus, including Suresh Krishna, who was on the board at that time. And then I had an idea to call the then Chief Minister Lalu Prasad. So Dr. Irani was overseas, and when I told him this idea on the phone, he says, Firdose, I've appreciated your out-of-the-box thinking, but this is now out of the mind. What is Lalu Prasad going to talk about quality? And I said, sir, let's give it a try. And it was fantastic. I can't get into the details of that. But the message was that if you want to get a message across, it's not always the contents. The messenger sometimes is even more important than the message. And when Lalu started talking quality to the workers after the meeting told me, sir, aap to aisa hum log ko bola nahi. And I can't find that plaque. I was trying to make a little plaque. I love quality, and that love was a red-shaped heart. And therefore, in that whole quality movement, instead of appealing and attacking the minds of the people, we attacked the emotions in the heart of the people, and I think we made some good progress from there. Then I became Vice President Marketing and Sales, where I was from 95 to 2000. Dr. Irani became Managing Director, and he says, I don't know anything about marketing and sales. So he says, let me send Firdose. He has shown a lot of aptitude for customer focus, and give him a shot. And I had not sold a kg of steel at that time. But it's one of the best times I've had, and I think I did help make that into a world-class industrial marketing organization. Quick stuff. Segmentation is a key marketing tool. Actually, it's a key management tool. And one of the things we did there is that we segmented our markets, our customers, on the basis of what is the competitive index we chose. It was invariably quality, product design, price. You competed on these items. And we said we will compete on time. And therefore, we redesigned the whole 2 key business processes, market development and order generation and fulfillment process, on 3 segments: bill to order, bill to item, and bill to forecast. But I'll leave it at that. But when all this was going on, a union member again came to me and said that, sir, आप तो बहुत काम कर रहा है, बहुत कुछ ये जू में बहुत कुछ चेंज ला रहा है. ये जू में आप ये है ना पूरा केज आप बदल रहा है, पर आप अंदर का जानवर को नहीं चेंज कर रहा है. He told me, he says, in this zoo of marketing and sales, you're changing the cage. How about changing the animals? And I asked him, what do you mean? And he says, you know, in older days, the sales manager knew me as a person. Today, the sales manager doesn't know me as a person. At best, he will know my name. If I was not okay, the previous sales manager knew I had a problem at home because I was not my normal self. Today, sales managers just see me as a labor item to do a job. He has no interest in my personal welfare. He says, please change that. And that helped, and that's a message I went through across. And again, coming back to the same thing of, unless you're in R&D or something like that, I think the focus around people and genuine care around people is a key aspect about being a successful leader. I will stop at that. I think I've exceeded my 30 odd minutes, so I'll stop here now.
Firdose, would you like to tell us something about the other companies, your experiences with Motorola and the other companies, any different management styles, or would we leave that for the questions? What would you prefer?
Unless you take unless this is your question.
Yeah, okay, make that my question.
Okay. So after I took early retirement and moved out of Tata's 33 years, I joined Motorola. It was a fantastic experience because I realized Motorola used to say that we are a global company. But actually, and I told that to the chairman there, I was chairman Motorola India, and I told the global chairman that Motorola is not a global company. It's a multinational company headquartered in Chicago. It was very US centric, and the culture was all around US and Western Europe. But it was very high tech, but very poor marketing. The products that they launched had so many features that the employees also did not know about it. Only the R&D people knew about it. So that was one cultural change. And the second was that it was very mercenary. You know, in Tata Steel, one had become a missionary. You worked like a missionary. There it was more mercenary. I remember attending the first product development meeting. We were trying to develop low-cost telephones before the Razor came in. For the Indian market, and obviously it was a global, some things were being done in Australia, some things in China, and we had a brainstorming session in Chicago. You know what the first item was? Incentive scheme. So I said, you guys are mad, the product is not developed and you're talking about an incentive scheme, call me when it's done. But otherwise it was a very, again I took the approach of what I did when I went to Tubes. Motorola was a very complicated organization, very complex. So I went to the chairman before joining. I said, please give me someone who knows Motorola, because any development, anything that I needed, I don't want to waste my time trying to work through the Motorola maze. So he gave me someone based in Florida, a senior person who was retiring, as my counterpart. So any approvals, because it was a very complicated system, very bureaucratic like all multinationals. But I could focus on the marketing side because everything where my predecessor was getting sucked in and managing internal, I had offloaded it. So that was one trick I learned and used well. Hirco was real estate. It was, whereas in Motorola and when I was chairman Tata Tele, it was like running an F1 race, You knew you had to do several laps in the minimum time, so it was around speed. Hirco was in real estate. It was like being a hunter in a jungle. You had to make your own road. Real estate is a messy business. But it was exciting. I used a lot of principles of engineering. For instance, in Tata Motors, it's an assembly line. The product comes to you on a build, the worker is stationary and you assemble it. I flipped it around and said, this is also assembly. The product doesn't move. the workers move. And to improve productivity, I put in a lot of video cameras, but 90% of them were fake. So that workers thought I was watching them. In fact, I was not watching them, but they thought they were being watched, because otherwise in construction, productivity is a challenge. And SR was, I wanted a different experience and I got it. It was a company where the promoters are still active, so it was quite a challenge navigating that. But I think my naivety came to the fore, because before joining, I'd asked that, do you have cash? Because if you don't have cash, I'm not a guy for fundraising. I can turn around things, which was my attraction to join Tata Steel, that a 10 million plant that was hardly producing 20-30% of its capacity, and an opportunity to ramp it up from 2.5-3 million to 10 million. And that really excited me. And I said, but if you don't have funds, I can't do it. You have to put petrol in my car. I will drive the car. And they said, yes, we have. But what they had was sanctions from the bank. They didn't have the cash. And that was a real challenge after that, because they had to put in equity that never came, and that's another story by itself. So I'll leave it that quick one. Slightly long answer, but can't make it any shorter.
Okay, thank you. In fact, I'd like to throw the floor open now, because I believe there must be many questions after this very interesting style of narrative on leadership, which I'm sure that many youngsters who have questions. So those of you who have questions, could you just put your cameras on? And that would be a good indicator, and we could take the questions one by one. And Firdose has very kindly agreed to answer spontaneously, as he says, on the fly, with his decades of experience. Questions, anyone? Please put your cameras on so that we can see who is asking the question.
Yeah, so
I can see the
my name is Kailash Mani. I work for Tata Steel and I'm based out of Calcutta. So can I ask my question?
Please, please do. Could you get your camera on?
Yeah, so
okay, Mani, if it's not there, doesn't matter, please. Yeah, Maish, you just go ahead and ask, please.
I'm Kailash.
We've lost you. Is it a connection issue?
Looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Can I ask my question? I'm Kailash Mani. I work for Tata Steel and I'm based out of Calcutta.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So can you hear me, Mr. Vandrevala? Can you hear my question?
Loud and clear.
Okay. So thank you for taking my question. One is that, could you tell us about the experience of launching SAP? I believe it was started in your tenure when you were Chief of or Vice President Marketing and Sales. Something about the SAP experience and how it helped to reach out to the customer better. And the second question was, today we are having a huge focus on health and safety and environment. We are making a journey towards that. So was there any thought about health, safety and environment practices or focus on those during your tenure or during your days in the steel company? These are my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mani. You know, I told you we did the re-engineering and I went through it very quickly because of lack of time. But as part of the re-engineering, we brought in SAP. At that time, earlier IT was a substructure of strategy. But because at that time technology was moving so fast, IT drove strategy and not strategy drove IT. And therefore, with my colleague Viresh Oberoi at that time, we redesigned these processes and felt SAP was necessary. And we had called Dr. Irani then to Tata Center then, and we made a presentation to him of what we wanted to do and said SAP is essential to make this happen. And he told us that, what is the budget like? I can't remember the number. It was 7 crores, 8 crores, something. And at that time, he said, sorry, we can't afford it. I can't afford to give you 7 crores for SAP. And I told him, sir, if you can't afford to 7 crores or whatever that number was, I could be way out, so let me not quote that number, that if you can't afford to do SAP, it is so necessary, please don't pay us for 3 months. We will go without salary. And from the money we make after the re-engineering, you pay us. So he got convinced by that strong argument I made, and we brought in SAP. A lot of problems. I remember too, the union committee members would tell me, "Hey, Saab, ab kya saap laga diya company mein?" SAP became SAP. But more than I think the basic thing SAP did was to bring in discipline. I remember we had loaded a train for Tata Motors in Jamshedpur, not Pune. But they didn't have the address right. So SAP wouldn't let it go. For some strange reason, some code was there. And the overriding authority was only with me. And I got a call that, can we send it? I said, no, get it right. Because once I start giving overriding clearances, it will never end. And that guy from Tata Motors rang me up and says, I will talk to my chairman. I said, okay, sure. I will also talk to my chairman. By the way, he's the same chairman. And I held that train up for overnight and they got it right. And in that period, when I had the authority to override the system, I gave 0 clearances just to establish, because everything was a shortcut at that time. So it was a tough thing to get the approvals. It was a tough one to implement it. I remember one of my colleagues was Bimlender Jha. He spent several nights sleeping on the conference table at Tata Steel because he was working overnight, making the things happen to meet our deadline dates. But those were heady, lovely days. Coming to your second question of health, safety, and environment, very much top of the agenda. I'll give you two incidents that come to my mind. You know, we have these level crossings. They come down, and you're supposed to stop. But invariably, the cyclists would get off the cycle, tilt the cycle, go under the level crossing gate, and cross the railway tracks. So I was on a bike then, I was stopped, and this guy did it. I got off the bike and chased him. I ran after him, after the Coke Ovens level crossing, accosted him and took away his gate pass and deposited with the security. Next day, I found out he was a very important union committee member. And then he happened to become somebody big in the government also thereafter. You can guess who it was. But it was not, at that time, the importance was there, but it was personal. For instance, I remember in bar forging, if someone was without a helmet, I would send him back to work. Union came to me and fought with me. I said, I don't care. He's my man. I'm responsible for his safety. If he gets an accident, you are not going to be suffering. I will suffer because my conscience hurts. I would send him home. If he was without his safety shoes, or if he was running on the machine that was machining the axles and didn't have his goggles, out, go home. You marked absent for the day. And there was chaos for a few days, but then things became much better. Environment was also at a very low level. I remember my first visit to POSCO in South Korea. We had just started putting up gardens in Tata Steel. And when I was there, we had a presentation and we were talking. And I did a little bit of showing off. I told him that in our steel plant, we have 5 gardens. And I asked him, how many gardens do you have in your steel plant? And this guy said, sir, we don't have any garden in our steel plant. And I said, what? No garden in your steel plant? He says, no, sir. We have steel plant and garden. I felt like throttling his throat. He really made me feel like an nincompoop. But we did have those steps. But I think what Tata Steel has achieved now, I remember a few years ago, I wanted to visit the plant and they made me go through a safety induction program. I said, that's too good. The priest is getting his induction all over again. And I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, thank you. Very good context. Thank you for your great feedback and experiences. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question.
Thank you, Shailesh. Firdose, there's a question from Sushil Oja, whose audio is not working, but it's an interesting question which I think many of us would want to know. His question is, how do you diagnose early stage leadership failure? Would you like to share your views, Firdose?
I think, there can be, one is, you are the best person. My strong advice to all of you is, don't ignore your gut. Every time I've taken a gut decision, or I've not taken a gut decision, when I've taken it, I have not regretted it, and when I've not taken it, I have regretted it. That I think, and I was just reading a book on guts. Guts is, it's very well written. It's what you learn unconsciously. It's, whereas what we think is, they call it evolved logic. But gut is not evolved logic, but it's there in your system. And I think most people will know when they are failing before the environment starts telling you, or the results start telling you that it's not working. But you take the case of my own case. When did I realize that I was not working as a leader? And I'll take the last case where I was in Tata Steel. SR Steel. The aspirations and the wave, you have to be in frequency with your owners. When I was in RM1, let me go back a bit. Twice a week, I would visit the plant in the night when there was no breakdown. After my usual partying and coming home at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, I would go on my bike to RM1 to have chai with the workers in the night, with the crane drivers and all. They would sit down and have, and I would have tea with them. And at that time, the strife was taking place in the company on the succession plan that I referred to earlier. And those of you in Tata Steel may know some of that history. And I asked one of the workers there, he says, "Ye Modi Sahab or Irani Sahab, Modi Sahab or Tata Sahab ka jhagda chal raha hai, aapka kya vichar hai?" And he gave me a beautiful, clear answer that helped me later on. He said, "Sahab, Modi Sahab हमारा बॉस है, आप मेरा बॉस है. आप बोलो कान पकड़ो, हम कान पकड़ेगा. आप बोलो बैठा, हम बैठेगा. आप बोलो उठेगा, हम उठेगा. मोदी साहब बॉस है, आप बॉस है. टाटा साहब मालिक है. बॉस मालिक का साथ झगड़ा नहीं कर सकता." When I found myself frequency not in line with the owners, I left SR Steel. So I think, but a lot of it comes, one is expectations of results and what you think you should get. We should give you some idea that things are not working out. When there's a backlash from the people, but much more before that, I think if you're honest to yourself, if you have intellectual honesty, your gut will tell you, boss, it's not working. And then you either take corrective action or you evade. Sushil, I hope that helped. There are no 10 tick-off checkpoints to know when leaders are failing.
Yes. I think Sushil is satisfied because his audio is not working, but I've got no answers, further questions from him. So if there are any questions from someone else, I think there's perhaps a question coming up from SKO. That's Sushil.
Yes, sir. Thanks. Now, so I have heard your viewpoints, and really it is a practical one. Only one thing, and it is there, as you have said, that one should be very open to share the viewpoint. Only one point which is coming all across. I have interacted with few of senior leadership positions, and it is my analysis that let's say there are a situation where director level position, the work or the thing which is being disposed at that level, probably it could have been disposed at one level junior to that position. So in that context, this question was asked that whether it is leadership, early stage leadership failure diagnosis will help, or this problem is something else?
See, when one person is doing a job of what his subordinate should be doing, it's indicative of two things. One, the subordinate is incompetent, but more likely than that, more likely is that that person is insecure and wants to do things himself. I have been very lucky that all the leaders that I've worked with have been very secure leaders. When you have an unsecure leader, life can be miserable in an organization. And that's when you find work being taken up. And I know recent, because I coach a few people where their boss does their job or over supervises, and invariably the problem is because that boss is insecure.
Yes, sir. Right. Thanks, sir. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Sir, good evening. This is Raghava from Tata Steel in Mumbai. Oftentimes we learn about our strengths and weaknesses from others. Could you please give some practical tips on how to know oneself, because you were mentioning that is one of the very keys in developing oneself as a leader.
Set down clear goals. Like I told you, when I went to marketing and sales, I had no idea about marketing and sales. I was instinctive about it and I read a lot about it, but I had no experience. So I wrote down things I wanted to do, which included time management. So I had an assistant called Arun Srivastava. And those days I used to use a palm. We didn't have smartphones. Part of his responsibility was to track what I was doing on a daily basis. And at the end of the week, he would tell me how much time solved where. And I told him that I want to spend minimum time on reacting and maximum time on acting, where I could initiate things. Because I think most of us in our work get trapped in reacting to things. Mails come, letters come, people come with problems, and I'm busy solving those problems. So for instance, when I was Tata Power MD, I would never have an appointment before 11 o'clock. Preferably it was, I told my secretary, all meetings after lunch. So morning was free, walk-ins if people wanted, otherwise I just wanted time to myself. Now Jamshedji Tata, who started the whole thing, he would spend the first few hours at home thinking before he went to his office. In our time, we couldn't have that luxury. If you were late, you were late. You got half day off. Cultures were different, times were different. But I think basically you have some clear goals for yourself and establish how you're going to get there. I'm on the board of a company, Premium Transmission, which is actually on gearboxes. And I coach two of the senior people. The first thing I've done is, what is your design your mirror. What is your mirror and what do you want to see in the mirror? And then we debate what is it they want to achieve. And then it comes to how they're going to achieve it. So clarity on what you want to achieve. I think all of us get trapped. I'm very busy, calls, emails. Don't, if you want to be a leader, spend more time acting, less time reacting. And the second point I want to make, that if you want to be a successful leader, invariably any management talk is about change management. Now you have to be very perceptive about change. There are two types of change: technical change and behavioral change. All of us concentrate on technical change. For instance, from rolling mills to continuous casting, from batch type galvanizing to continuous batch annealing to continuous annealing. Those are all technical changing. The software on the phone, how to, from Android to iOS, those are easily done. But your success will come from behavioral change. Making behavioral change is next to impossible. I've been trying to lose weight. Every year it's my New Year resolution, birthday resolution, lose weight. And every day in the morning, I take my weight. But by measuring my weight and by resolving to reduce my weight is not dropping. I have to have behavioral change. Then because of the lockdown, I started intermittent fasting. That behavioral change has helped me to lose some weight. But my love for Boo is not allowing me to lose any more weight. And I said, okay, this is my limit. This is me. I accept it. I'm happy. Let's move on. I'll not put on weight. I've revised the target to be realistic. Because that behavioral change of over-exercising and under-eating, because that's basically an arithmetic equation. Energy output has to be less than energy input. And that you do by increasing output or reducing input or both. I can't do it. I've reached my limit. I accept it. I accept reality, which is another quality that leaders must have, a quality of resilience. If you want to be a successful leader, you must have resilience. Your ability to bend and bounce back without breaking. And resilience is not something that you are just born with. It is something that you can learn also. And there are 3 things that you need to have. Accept reality. I've accepted the reality that, look, boss, 90 kg is my weight. I was 100, I'm down to 90, I can't become 80. Ideal weight is 80, I've accepted that reality, fine. Second, and that is based on what happened to the Jews in the Nazi camps, a deep belief that life is meaningful. And then an uncanny habit, an uncanny ability to adapt and improvise. So now I have a rule that if I have a drink, then I avoid dessert at night. And if I have dessert at night, then I have to avoid a drink. Because having both, which is ideal for me, means too much energy going into the system.
Thank you.
I hope that helps.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Does Sushil Avinash have a question? Because I see your camera coming on.
Yeah, I have a question.
I think perhaps this should be the last question because we are out of time. Unless there's somebody else who wants to, you could send me a message. Sushil, please go ahead.
I think we already. No. Yeah, thank you. Good evening, sir. It was this, 4th opportunity to talk to you, and I'm really happy to meet you again. I'll put a question in a very, very brief manner. So, which book would you recommend us to at this stage, or has impressed you a lot, so that we can take some parallel thoughts or something like that? So, any such recommendation which you think we should go through?
No, I'm afraid I cannot give you one book, but what I will tell you one, please read. And read on variety of things. Don't read on management alone. I think the important thing for a leader is to have a wider view of the world. Let me tell you a story, since we are in a storytelling mode, and this is a true story told to me by a guy called Andre Bettel, who was a sociology professor in Jawaharlal Nehru Institute. JRD Tata had started a program, an institute called the National Institute of Advanced Studies. I was the first participant along with Mr. Muthuraman. The whole idea of that program was that we went to TMTC Pune, now it runs in Bangalore. And I don't know if Tata Steel sends people there, but I would strongly recommend that you request your management to consider it. In conservative village somewhere in Karnataka, deep, very, very conservative, small village. And every day the women there would walk several miles to a well to collect water in the morning on their heads, bring it back on their vessels, and again do the same in the afternoon. And then the district collector, when he noticed this, he got budget approvals, put in tube wells, an overhead pattern tank in each house, and a water tap. And there was a function, they opened the tap, and there was good press coverage, Thalia, etc. 2 months later, they found the women are still going to the well. They opened the tap, the water was running. They checked the pH value of the water, 7.00. Perfectly neutral, not acidic, not alkaline. What was the problem? Then they found that what they saw as a problem was not a problem. The women met at the well because that was their congregation opportunity for gossip. Because they could not meet in the village. The husbands would not allow that to happen. So that was their social meeting point. So many times the solution defines the problem, because the engineer knew about tube wells and he saw that as a problem. But that was not the problem. You killed an opportunity for them. They were willing to carry the water on their heads because it gave them an opportunity to meet socially. So all of us have a tendency to see the problem based on the solution that we know or we have. And therefore, if you're reading something, I would tell you to read Stephen Hawking's. Okay, let me pick up some books that I have recently read and tell you, rather than. I read a book on 9 points. It's about blood. Stephen Hawking's Unlocking the Universe. The Genes by Siddharth Mukherjee, about our genes and DNA. So read various things. Don't read management books. 10-20% of management books is fine. You are actually in a position where you're practicing it, and nothing like, you learn swimming by swimming, not by learning how to swim or reading books on swimming. My suggestion to all of you is read different type of books. Sapiens. If any of you have not read Sapiens, please read it. It's a super book about the evolution of mankind. Yuval Noah Harari. Change by Design. Homo Deus. Clash of Civilization. Einstein. It's about Einstein's life. Then I read a novel, Gentleman in Moscow. The Theory of Everything, Stephen Hawking. It's actually written by his daughter. A very lovely book. If you're an engineer or a scientist, you would love it. The Art of the Good Life, 9 Pines. HDFC Bank 2.0. It's about the story of HDFC. Very interesting. 6 Easy Pieces, Rules of Civility. Tata versus Mystery. The Gene. 21 Lessons of the 21st Century. Mahabharat. A Steel Man in India, written by John Keenan. You know Keenan Stadium in Jamshedpur? He has written a book, A Steel Man in India, which I read. And this year's books I've read, Gut Feeling. It's about a very interesting book. The Road to Character. No Ordinary Disruption. Ikigai. It's with the Japanese. Very nice. How to improve your lifespan. Unlocking the Universe. That's Stephen Hawking. Death by Sadhguru. Very interesting book. Read it. India Unlimited by Arvind Panagaria. Upheaval by Jared Diamond. Another thing I would suggest, many of you, if you're not comfortable reading, go to audiobooks. For instance, the book on upheaval, on Audibles, I read it, I heard it when I go for my walks. I did in Audibles, but I have a weak left eye, so I try to read because that's exercise for my eye. The Third Chimpanzee, beautiful book. It's about us. We are the third chimpanzees. Stuff Matters, excellent book about materials, concrete, steel, glass, ceramics. Then I read The History of Jerusalem, Moonwalking with Einstein, The City of Visions, Love and Other Thought Experiments. Before Memory Fades, it's the autobiography of Pauline Nariman. The Biography of Resistance, Mindset, Too Much and Never Enough, Mary Trump. With all that's happening in the US, I was interested to read that. The Rosie Effect, One Indian Girl, Chetan Bhagat, Conflicts, Edward De Bono, Kaifi and I, written by Shabana Azmi's mother. Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, written by Mr. Mashelkar. So variety of books. I think it's not what you read, but the more variety you read, the better off you will be. That's my.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. And what you said about the SR, no, and that's I mean, you actually don't need an acknowledge or a witness to say that, but unfortunately, during those days, I was a part of that company, and that time I had an opportunity to meet you twice. So what you said, actually, I could relate to that time. So yeah, I mean, that's.
See, simple culture. For instance, we have our daily report in Tata Steel. So we started a reporting, and if you remember, I started my talk today by saying a leader is one who gives energy and doesn't suck energy. There would be a monthly meeting. For preparing for the monthly meeting, all the managers 1 week before are preparing for the meeting, getting data, making the presentation. I found it ridiculous. So I instituted the software Tableau, where all the data is there. I instituted a standard MIS so that I could go anytime and have a review meeting, no preparation required. The MIS said it. We had a standard framework, like all watches. All the 12s are in the same, the frame may be different, the technology may be different, but the layout of the time on every watch, 12 is on top, 6 is at the bottom, 3 is on the right, 9 is at the left. So that's a clear. So I had made a standard framework, but the owner's philosophy was different. No information should be shared. Whereas my thing was, the more people know information, they become part of a team. Whereas for them, it was more divide and rule. Mine was unite and stand. So when the philosophies are different, then it's better to step out, because the boss can't fight with the Malik.
Yeah, I agree, sir.
I was not the Malik. So I learned from that lesson and stepped aside before it got ugly and undesirable.
Yeah, I do connect with it, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing the real, heartfelt feelings and the real experiences. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we are out of time.
In a sense also,
I beg your pardon?
Such opportunities makes you think and go back in time and recall the old days.
Absolutely. In fact, for those, I mean, I know that there is the formality of thanking you, but instead of a regular speech, I think I must say on behalf of all of us that we really enjoyed your natural style. And as you said, instead of giving us gyan, your narrative style was such a refreshing change that you kept us all engaged and we all forgot the time. And it was delightful that you center it around people, because at the end of the day, technology comes and goes, but it's the people who drive it. I love the stories that you spoke about: heart, magnanimity, courage, truthfulness, trust, popular versus respected. And thanks for your lovely candor, not to mention the book list. But I look at your talk today, and I think I speak for all of us, as a trailer, because we want more. So once the lockdown is over, I want a commitment out of you that you come and address us again in Jamshedpur. And on behalf of JMA, I'd like to invite you for an evening, another evening with us, followed by a dinner where we will celebrate leadership, celebrate openness, and celebrate the candor with which you kept us engaged throughout the evening. From all of us, many, many thanks.
You wanted my address, I'll send it to you. 1201 Lasamriza, Dadar East, Mumbai.
No, we want to. Okay. We want to.
No, I promise to come to Jamshedpur. I'm dying to come to Jamshedpur, but with the one caveat: it won't be an address. We'll have a fireside chat. I'm better at it. It's much more fun. Otherwise, gyans are too much here. I can't listen to gyan, and therefore I don't want to give it.
Amitabh, please note that a fireside chat, and okay, and it should be a lovely interactive session like this.
I always have the last word, so I want to say my last words.
Please.
It's 2 words only. Don't quit. When things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learn. And many a person turns about when they might have won had they stuck it out. Don't give up when the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Often the struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup, and he learned too late when the night came down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out. So stick to the fight when you are hardest hit. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. Thank you.
Bravo. I wish we all had our cameras on because you'd have a resonating applause. Thank you again. Thanks a lot. And congratulations, Amitabh, for organizing it.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks, sir. It's the best start that Inspiring Leadership series could have.
Thank you all. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amitabh ji, for arranging.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
He did very well. Very good.